Okay, let's dive in. Today we're going to unpack some pretty significant developments in the crypto world. We're using a news wrap-up from Cointelegraph as our guide here.
Yeah, it's a good source. It pulls together three really key things happening right now: platform changes, regulatory moves, and even potential new laws. It paints a picture, really.
Exactly. We're talking OpenSea, the SEC, and a new bill popping up in the U.S. Congress. And the interesting part is how they connect or maybe show different angles on the same challenge.
Right. Innovation, regulation, the search for clarity. It's all in there. So
Yeah.
by digging into these specific events, we can maybe get a better sense of where things are heading for you interacting with digital assets.
So first up, according to the source, is a big platform evolution, OpenSea. Everyone
Sure.
knows them for NFTs, right?
Hmm.
But they've just launched OS2, their new platform. It's officially out of beta now.
And it's more than just a new coat of paint. The really key thing here is OS2 isn't just for NFTs anymore. It's built to handle trading for, well, pretty much all kinds of tokens.
Across 14 different blockchains, it says.
Yeah, 14. And they specifically mention things like fungible tokens on Solana, so your standard cryptos or utility tokens, and gaming tokens on Ronin, the chain Axie Infinity uses.
So it's a much broader scope than just unique collectibles.
Definitely. And OpenSea's goal here is pretty ambitious. Their chief marketing officer, Adam Hollander, is quoted saying they want to make everything on-chain liquid and discoverable in one place. That's the vision.
One place for everything. He also mentioned simplifying things for users, right? Like getting rid of the need to.
Yeah, the quote was about avoiding juggling half a dozen dApps and bridges. All those extra steps people often have to take just to move things around or make a trade.
Right. Instead, they're aiming for a single wallet flow. So the idea is you could, I don't know, mint an NFT, swap a gaming token, maybe grab a new meme coin, all without leaving their platform.
Which would be quite a change. And what's interesting is the timing, or rather the user activity mention. Even though the overall market isn't as hot as it was in, say, 2021, the source says OpenSea's weekly unique collectors are actually up 40% since January.
Wow, 40%. That's significant. Does the source explain that?
Well, it offers an interpretation. It suggests maybe the tourists left, but the true user stayed, and they're participating in more chains than ever. So the idea is the remaining users are more engaged, more exploratory.
Interesting take. So connecting that back, what does it mean when a huge platform like OpenSea, known for one thing, broadens out like this? How might that impact, you as a user?
Well, it points towards integration, doesn't it? Trying to break down those walls between different crypto niches. Instead of needing separate platforms for NFTs, DeFi, gaming assets, maybe they start converging. OpenSea's move is a big step in that potential direction.
Okay, so that's platform evolution. Let's shift gears now to regulation. There's some major news involving the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC.
Oh, yeah, this definitely made headlines. On May 29th, the SEC actually asked a federal court to dismiss its lawsuit against Binance, the big crypto exchange, and its founder, Changpeng Zhao, or CZ.
Dismiss it entirely. Why?
The reason they gave, according to the Cointelegraph piece, was pretty brief. They said it was appropriate in the exercise of its discretion and as a policy matter. The article also notes the case had been on pause since February anyway.
Now, it's really important to clarify which lawsuit this is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Binance and CZ have had other legal issues.
Absolutely crucial. This SEC lawsuit, the one just dropped, was filed back in June 2023. It was about alleged securities law violations, things like mishandling customer funds, misleading people about their controls, that specific stuff.
Okay, so that's separate from the big settlement they reached with the Department of Justice, the DOJ, last November.
Completely separate. The source makes that distinction clear. The DOJ settlement was about different things: violating sanctions, being an unlicensed money transmitter, failures in anti-money laundering.
Right, that was the one with the huge $4.3 billion fine, wasn't it?
Exactly. That's where the massive fine came from, plus the admissions of guilt on those charges. And that's also why CZ had to step down as CEO and got that 4-month jail sentence. That case is settled. Done. This SEC case was the other one.
Got it. And how did Binance react to the SEC dropping this suit?
Well, the source mentions they posted on X, calling it a huge win for crypto.
I bet. So stepping back a bit, the source also notes this isn't like a totally isolated incident, right? It mentions the SEC has taken action against other crypto firms recently, and then sometimes settled or dropped parts of suits.
Yeah, it mentions names like Coinbase, Consensus, Kraken. It suggests a bit of a pattern, perhaps, under the current administration, though each case has its own specifics, of course.
So what does this decision maybe combined with those others, signal for crypto exchanges operating in the U.S. Doesn't exactly scream clarity, does it?
No, it doesn't provide definitive answers, but it's definitely another piece of the puzzle. It shows the regulatory landscape is still very much in flux. It's something you need to be aware of if you're using these platforms.
Which leads us perfectly into the third piece from the source,
Mm-hmm.
an attempt to create some clarity through legislation.
Right, a new bill introduced in the U.S. Congress. It's called the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act of 2025, or the Clarity Act for short.
Clarity Act. Okay.
Yeah.
And who's behind this?
It was introduced by Representative French Hill, a Republican, but the source really emphasizes that it's a bipartisan effort. It specifically mentions 3 Democratic co-sponsors. Getting both sides on board in this area is, it's noteworthy.
Definitely. And what problem is this Clarity Act trying to solve?
It's aiming right at that core issue we always talk about, but the confusion over who regulates what. Is it the SEC? Is it the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC? Which digital assets fall under whose jurisdiction? This bill tries to draw clearer lines.
So providing long overdue clarity, as Representative Hill is quoted saying.
Exactly. He framed it as being about protecting consumers, but also fostering American innovation, trying to find that balance, and building on previous work, apparently.
Does the source give specifics on what the bill actually requires?
It does. For crypto developers, it talks about needing accurate and relevant disclosures, things about how the project works, who owns it, the structure, basically. Transparency.
Okay. And what about for the companies dealing directly with customers?
Yeah.
Brokers, dealers, exchanges, maybe.
For them, the bill outlines some pretty significant rules. Clear disclosures to customers, a requirement to keep customer funds separate from the company's own money, that's asset segregation, a big deal after some recent collapses.
Yeah, definitely.
And also measures to reduce conflicts of interest, things like registration requirements, transparency standards, operational rules, basically setting up a more formal regulatory structure.
So how might a bill like this, if it were to move forward, actually change things for digital assets and, for you interacting with them?
Well, it's Congress attempting to write the rule book, right? Instead of relying on existing laws that weren't designed for crypto, this would create specific rules for the road. It could potentially lead to much clearer expectations for businesses and more defined protections for users.
Okay, so let's pull these 3 threads together. We've got OpenSea expanding its platform way beyond NFTs with OS2, aiming for this integrated multi-chain experience.
Yep. Then you have the SEC, a key regulator, stepping back from a major lawsuit against Binance, adding another twist to the regulatory story.
And finally, a bipartisan push in Congress, the Clarity Act, trying to proactively set clear rules for developers and platforms.
Exactly. Platform innovation, regulatory actions, and legislative efforts. They're all happening concurrently, all shaping what the future of digital assets might look like.
It really shows how different forces are trying to define this space. Companies building, regulators reacting or adjusting, lawmakers trying to legislate.
So I guess the final thought to leave folks with is, when you look at all this, does it feel like the crypto space is moving towards more integration and clarity? Or do these shifting dynamics, these pushes and pulls, actually signal more ongoing uncertainty for a while longer?
Yeah, what questions does this raise for you about how all these different parts of the tech, the regulators, the lawmakers are trying to figure out their roles and maybe figure each other out? Something to think about?